Our life. It surprises us in ways we can't always predict or fully understand. And sometimes the bonds we create with the people around us intertwine in such deep and complex ways that it's hard to define where friendship begins, where trust ends, and where, perhaps, something more subtle and intimate begins to blossom. A few years ago, Ryan asked to move in with me. At the time, he was just a teenager, and his parents had left for Los Angeles, leaving him in a situation that required care and attention. For me, that was a gift. After my ex-husband, John, left, the house had become a silent, almost empty place. Ryan's presence brought back an energy that I didn't even know was missing. He was young, but he had a maturity that surprised me. And over time, our coexistence became so natural that I barely realized how close we were getting. I, Mary, at 52, have always considered myself an experienced woman, but also someone who takes care of herself with care and dedication. My body, which many people mistake for that of a 25-year-old woman, is the result of years of care and, of course, a little help from medicine. Last year, I decided to remodel my breasts, and the result was so harmonious that even I was surprised when I looked at myself in the mirror. They were full, attractive, and no one had touched them since John left. It was as if that part of me was dormant, waiting for something or someone to awaken it again. Ryan and I lived in a harmony that only time and coexistence can create. I felt so comfortable with him that I often walked around the house without clothes on, something that, for me, was completely natural. After all, almost a decade of living together creates an intimacy that goes beyond formalities. He, in turn, never seemed to mind, although I noticed that sometimes his eyes would quickly land on me, especially when I got out of the shower without covering myself completely. But I never minded. That house was our refuge, and there everything was allowed. Ryan was a reserved young man. He didn't like going out to meet other girls, and I knew that this wasn't due to a lack of interest, but rather because he had a certain difficulty in opening up to others. With me, however, he was different. He felt comfortable sharing his thoughts, his doubts, his insecurities. And I was always there to listen to him, to advise him, to be the safe haven he needed. But there was something else, something that I began to notice as time went by. Sometimes he would spend hours in the bathroom, and I, with my vast experience, knew exactly what was going on. I never bothered him, never said anything. After all, that was a natural part of a young man's life. But little by little, I began to notice the times when he did his activities, and, without meaning to, I began to help him discreetly. I would go to my room and leave the door half open, lying on the bed with a transparent fabric that highlighted the delicate curves of my waist. I knew he could see me, and somehow that made me feel alive, desired. It was as if, in that moment, I was helping him in a way that only the two of us understood. Life is made up of moments like these, of connections that go beyond what words can explain. And deep down, I knew that this was just another chapter in the story of Ryan and Mary, two human beings who, somehow, found in each other what they needed to move forward. I knew Ryan was watching. There was a small mirror on the right headboard of the bed, and sometimes I would move the fabric to the side so he could see better from a distance. The large savings account was a way to help him use the bathroom faster, since there was only one in our house. Over time, this became more common. I remember one time I had to leave early to take care of some business in the city. As soon as I got out of the shower, I went to the kitchen to tell him, still covered in the towel. "Ryan, if you want me to bring you anything after I take care of a problem at the bank, I'll go to the supermarket to buy a cucumber and some other fruit to make a special dinner," I said to him, smiling as he watched me discreetly and respectfully from a distance. "Don't worry, I'll eat whatever you bring," he said, smiling as if he was going to eat something else. That day was very tense. I had been out all day and had left some things ready to eat in the microwave, in case he was very hungry in the afternoon. When I got home around 8 p.m., he wasn't in the living room or kitchen playing with his cell phone, as usual. This made me a bit curious, since he almost never went to bed early. I walked slowly to the bedroom where he had been and, when I saw him sleeping on his side with a tool sticking out, I realized how bulky it was, thrown to the side. Not even my ex-husband had an interesting and strong tool like that. That really caught my attention, something I hadn't felt in a long time. I closed the door and left him resting there while I prepared dinner, since I was very hungry. After about an hour, he woke up and came into the kitchen. I was startled, because I thought he was going to sleep straight through until early morning. He didn't even notice that the tool left an interesting bulge even though it was there at that moment. The one watching was me, thirsty. Although many people find this story unusual, I was living alone without knowing anyone, and everything I saw reminded me of the time I had lived, the nights I had spent and the good times riding horses. As soon as I finished dinner, I realized that he was also hungry, and I took the opportunity to vent about my busy day. Meanwhile, he seemed excited and was observing from afar the perky breasts that were resting on the table while I ate. The table was small, and Ryan was on my right side, exchanging interesting glances and telling me about his life, the projects he was thinking about when he left. For a moment, that almost familiar company made me miss it. I didn't like the idea of him leaving, and from the conversation, I realized that in fact he wanted to do things and try to start a life in another city with new friends. I looked at him, holding his hand that was resting on his thigh, asking him if I could do anything to make him stay. He nodded, saying that he had also gotten used to living there with me. As my hands rested on the fabric, I noticed something bulky that was slowly reaching her, almost reaching her knees. I couldn't stay there eating dinner for long. I was hungry for something else that was in line with his hunger as well. With a loving gesture, I picked up the tool with a light service movement, taking it out of the box that was stored in the kitchen. The happiness in his eyes was the same as someone who had found a treasure. I stood up, getting closer to him, offering him the breasts he had been looking at so eagerly. Meanwhile, the tool that had never worked was about to discover a screw thread to be used. I moved the light red fabric aside so that it would fit perfectly on the table. There were no words, but it was a feeling of helping others and, at times, asking him to stay and not leave. I confess that I found it somewhat difficult to fit the tool into the hole, because in that situation a lubricant was needed to reduce friction for the time the precious thing was being used. His idea of applying oil was the only way for the tool to work that night on the dry screw thread. I didn't want to end that job anymore. As I gave instructions, he complemented it with the videos he had always watched alone. It was all natural. When the job was finished, I took a few steps forward, feeling my legs tremble with exhaustion, but it was a feeling of accomplishment, of being able to make someone special always be there. Every morning, he wakes up very excited, and we continue working together for a long time in various areas of the house, helping each other. So, what did you think of Mary's story? Interesting, right? I hope you had fun and understood that the important thing is to help each other, but that everything must be done with respect and limits. Never, ever, get close to something that is not allowed. Did you like this story? Then leave a comment telling us what you thought, and, if you have experienced something similar, share it with us. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any new content. Here, we always bring life stories, reflections and real experiences, all with great sincerity. Thank you for watching until the end and for being part of this journey. See you in the next video.